Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. This evening I'm going to offer some reflections on the Sagala Sutta. This is something that I have spoken of in the past, but I think not for a long time. The Sagala Sutta is in the Digha Nikaya, and it's a fairly longish sutta. I'm going to just focus on one section of it. It has been called the Layman's Vinaya because it has detailed instructions about how people should live in society, lay people, how they should conduct their affairs. And the key section, and I'll be referring to the text here, the key section involves the Buddha encountering a layman dressed in white, making a puja, offering homage to the 6 directions: north, south, east, west, above and below. And the Buddha asks him what he's doing. He says, this is a practice that has been passed down from my forefathers. This is a religious ceremony we do in our family to honor the 6 directions. And the Buddha, as he often does, he'll take a traditional form and imbue it with a more profound meaning. He says that that's very good, but let me show you, or let me explain to you how we honor the 6 directions in the Buddha's dispensation. And what he does is that he interprets each of the 6 directions as a type of human relationship. And he takes this individual man and analyzes his various relationships in the world and how these should be conducted. So I'm going to go through just that section. The thing to bear in mind, a couple of things to bear in mind to put it in context as we go through it. First of all is that the choice of the individual is in the end arbitrary, but we're dealing with a network of social relationships, and you can pick any individual and take that individual as the central node and read out from there. And it happens that this fellow is a fairly well-to-do Indian man of the merchant class, a Avesa caste. So he has a particular set of relationships, but you could pick any individual and extrapolate relationships out from that point. The other thing is to bear in mind is that in the specifics, we're dealing with a specific cultural, historical moment. And the details are specific to that time and place. But they could be transferred and altered to fit any time and place, including our own. And it's surprising how much of a kind of universal human condition comes through in the specific terms, but they are dealing with a cultural moment. So I'll just read this section. And how, householder son, does the Aryan disciple protect the 6 directions? These 6 things are to be regarded as the 6 directions. The east denotes mother and father, the south denotes teachers, the west denotes wife and children, the north denotes friends and companions, the nadir denotes servants, workers, and helpers, and the zenith denotes ascetics and Brahmins. These are the 5 ways in which a son should minister to his mother and father as the eastern direction. He should think, having been supported by them, I will support them. I will perform their duties for them. I will keep up the family tradition. I will be worthy of my heritage. After my parents' death, I will distribute gifts on their behalf. And there are 5 ways in which the parents, so ministered to by their son as the eastern direction, will reciprocate. They will restrain him from evil, support him in doing good, teach him some skill, find him a suitable wife, and in due time hand over his inheritance to him. In this way, the eastern direction is covered, making it at peace and free from fear. There are 5 ways in which pupils should minister to their teachers as the southern direction: by rising to greet them, by waiting on them, by being attentive, by serving them, by mastering the skills that they teach. And there are 5 ways in which the teachers, thus ministered to by their pupils as the southern direction, will reciprocate. They will give thorough instruction, make sure they have grasped what they should have duly grasped, give them a thorough grounding in all skills, recommend them to their friends and colleagues, and provide them with security in all directions. In this way, the southern direction is covered, making it at peace and free from fear. There are 5 ways in which a husband should minister to his wife as the western direction: by honoring her, by not disparaging her, by not being unfaithful to her, by giving authority to her, by providing her with adornments. And there are 5 ways in which a wife, thus ministered to by her husband as the western direction, will reciprocate: by properly organizing her work, by being kind to the servants, by not being unfaithful, by protecting stores, and by being skillful and diligent in all she has to do. In this way, the western direction is covered, making it at peace and free from fear. There are 5 ways in which a man should minister to his friends and companions as the northern direction: by gifts, by kindly words, by looking after their welfare, by treating them like himself, and by keeping his word. And there are 5 ways in which friends and companions, thus ministered to by a man as the northern direction, will reciprocate: by looking after him when he is inattentive, by looking after his property when he is inattentive, by being a refuge when he is afraid, and by not deserting him when he is in trouble, and by showing concern for his children. In this way, the northern direction is covered, making it at peace and free from fear. There are 5 ways in which a master should minister to his servants and work people as the nadir: by arranging their work according to their strength, by supplying them with food and wages, by looking after them when they are ill, by sharing special delicacies with them, and by letting them off work at the right time. And there are 5 ways in which servants and work people, thus ministered to by their master as the nadir, will reciprocate. They will get up before him, go to bed after him, take only what they are given, do their work properly, and be bearers of his praise and good name. In this way, the nadir is covered, making it at peace and free from fear. There are 5 ways in which a man should minister to ascetics and Brahmins as the zenith: by kindness in bodily deed, speech, and thought, by keeping open house for them, by supplying their bodily needs, And the ascetics and Brahmins thus ministered to by him as the zenith will reciprocate in 6 ways. They will restrain him from evil, encouraging him to do good, be benevolently compassionate towards him, teach him what he has not heard, clarify what he has heard, and point out the way to heaven. In this way the zenith is covered, making it at peace and free from fear. Thus the Lord spoke. So this is quite a significant passage, and there's some things to particularly note. That first of all, the purpose of these particular instructions is given at the end of each paragraph. He says, and thus this direction will be at peace and free from fear. So what he's talking about is a way of conducting human relationships in a harmonious manner, so that everybody's at peace and no one has any fear. So this is the formula for a harmonious society. So this is the goal or the purpose of these teachings. And then when we look at the nature of these various relationships, what we see is, first of all, that each relationship is symmetrical in that, or not symmetrical, I should say reciprocal. Each relationship is reciprocal in that both sides have duties to perform to the other in order to exist in a harmonious manner. But it's not symmetrical in that they're different. And also, for any given individual who's taken as the node, he or she will have different relationships in the different directions. And we could have taken any individual in this whole network, we've taken his workman or his wife or his teacher, anyone, and make them the center, and then examine their relationships, so that all of human society is this interlocked web of relationships. And what's the underlying theme here is these duties that are to be performed in both directions. And the English translation here is, the words that are used are a little bit difficult to translate. In each case, he says, for example, the 5 ways in which he will minister to his mother and father, minister to his pupils, minister to his wife, and so on. And the word translated as minister to is pachupatati, which means to set up, arrange, put in order. So to minister to here means acting correctly towards, putting things in order, doing that which must be done. And the Buddha uses a different word for the duties coming back to him from the other direction. The translation here is they will reciprocate, but the Pali has anukampati, which means acting out of compassion. And I think this is significant in that, remembering that this is the one who's being addressed, the center of the matrix is an arbitrary choice who's at the center, but we're dealing with this one man at the center. The Buddha is saying you should put things in order in all these directions. You should do proper deeds. And he's not saying because it's only you can only really you're only really responsible for your own actions and your own karma. So he's not saying then that these other people that you're ministering to owe you anything in return. He's saying that out of compassion they'll do this and that. So if he was addressing one of them, he'd say they should do it as a duty, and you can expect out of compassion you will receive the reciprocal duties. So this is quite significant, and it's a completely non-selfish, non-egotistical position, because he's not saying that you have any expectation this is what's owed to you, but this is what will happen if everybody is acting according to good order and out of compassion. Then everything will work harmoniously. Everybody will be compassionate towards each other, and they'll fulfill their various social roles in the various directions. I think this is quite different from what a contemporary Brahmin, for example, would say, or someone who was caste conscious from the warrior caste, say. They would have a sense of their privileges and expectations of what their caste privileges are. They might also have an idea of caste obligations, but the Buddha is not looking at privileges at all. He's expecting everyone to act selfishly, fulfill their duties, and then be compassionate towards the other. This is also quite different from what a modern social analysis would likely, the position a modern social analysis would likely take would be to frame things in terms of people's rights. That you have a right as the owner of the business, you have a right to expect, the workers to do such and such, and as a worker you have a right to your wages, and so on, instead of turning it around, not paying attention to the rights whatsoever, but looking at everybody's duties and obligations, and expecting the whole thing in the end to hang on these two principles of duty and compassion, and to make a harmonious society. And to as a secondary point is to see your place in the social matrix as not as an egotistic position, but as one node in a matrix of mutual reciprocal duties that are defined and specific and vary, and everybody has some position and a complex of relationships. In some relationships you might be the boss, in another position you're a servant, in another position you're a son, in another you're a father. Everybody has these, depending which way you're facing, which direction, east, west, north, south, up or down, you have a relationship of a particular kind. And there's no expectation in any of this that of value of equality, which is something that would have been in any case quite alien to the Indian state of mind. There's a specificity of social position in relationships. Now, moving outside this particular matrix a little bit, we should remember that this teaching is entirely confined to the conditioned existence. This is samsara. This is how we conduct ourselves in the conditioned world. You know? And the concept of freedom is something that, for the Buddha, in his teaching, is something that transcends the conditioned world. He's not so concerned with what we would think about our freedoms in the social matrix. That doesn't even come up here. Freedom for the Buddha is vimutti, liberation, is freedom from conditionality, freedom from sense desire, freedom from defilement, and the release of nibbana. And this is different from the worldly idea of freedom. I think most people, if they don't, if they're not, if they haven't examined the spiritual teachings, they would think freedom means being able to do whatever you want. Whereas for the Buddha, freedom would be freedom from wanting. If you have freedom to do what you want, then you're just a slave to your desires. And that's the most restrictive kind of bondage that there is. There's a story about Saka and Wepachiti. Saka's the king of the Devas, and Wepachiti's the king of the Asuras, and they're always at war with each other. And sometimes one gets the advantage, and sometimes the other. And at one point, Saka had beaten the Asura army, and he'd captured Wepachiti, and he had him in bondage, in chains and fetters in his throne room. And these were magical chains and fetters, in that whenever the Asura king thought evil thoughts against the Devas, the chains would tighten up on him. And if he thought kindly thoughts, then they would loosen, and he could get up and walk about. And the Buddha tells this little anecdote in one sutta. Then he says, you may think these are marvelous chains, but they're feeble and nothing to be compared to the fetters of Mara. And the fetters of Mara are the desires for pleasant sights, sounds, tastes, touches, and thoughts. The 6 fetters of Mara. And they're more insidious, more tricky, more magical than the fetters of Saka. And breaking those fetters, that's liberation. That's the freedom. That's vimutti in the Buddha's teaching. It's not the freedom to do whatever you want. Because this is the primary concern of the Buddha's teaching is always liberation and release from suffering, release from conditionality. But he does on occasion give teachings on a mundane plane dealing with conditioned existence and how we are to conduct ourselves in the world, and proper moral behavior. And this is a particularly interesting sutta. It's a rare case where he's dealing in a quite detailed way with lay people's social relationships and behaviors in the world. And I just read this short section. The sutta goes on has much more to it, where the Buddha is giving various kinds of advice about how to be a good friend and how to manage your affairs and so on. So I think I'll stop there.
Anamayam Dhammakataya Sadhu Karam Dadamase Sadhu Sadhu